going on, everybody? This is Lady Luck with Sweet Tea. How y'all doing? Okay. So, as you all can see, I know it's been a minute since I've been able to get a video up on the case about Tyrone Davis Jr., young man who lost his life in Florida around Christmas of last year while out on a trip with his girlfriend at the time. So there have been a lot of developments, and I've been kind of watching in the background and listening to True Crime Unraveled. Shout out to True Crime Unraveled for giving posting these fantastic videos and giving great commentary. I don't have Facebook, so these Facebook lives are so hard, for me to catch. The only way I see it is on YouTube. Shout out to What Didn't Add Up. The fantastic ladies on that panel is doing a great job. To the Open Book, to all of you that are reporting on this case and providing updates in real time, because it has a lot of moving parts. Oh my God. So I kind of want to start off going backwards if I can. This is the latest video that I have seen thus far where the Davis family, the father's side of the family of the young man, has now an advocate that's helping them with the case. There have been some allegations made against the father, Tyrone Sr., involving a young lady and all these things. And it's just, goodness, it's a headache. So I want to stay focused on justice for this young man so that hopefully, information regarding the investigation, the accident records, whatever the family can release regarding the medical records. It won't be all of it because of HIPAA privacy, but whatever they're able to summarize and share as far as the medical examination and just some surface summaries done from the autopsy report. I do not expect them to divulge into the medical exam because of the HIPAA privacy. That is a federal law. Whether you are alive or deceased, you have that protection under the law for your medical records to maintain some level of confidentiality, unless whatever is in the records is of great importance to the public health. Meaning, let's say there was some unknown virus that, is highly contagious and, he was a possible carrier. You would need to know who, he may have been exposed to. That would be the only time you would really see, more medical information released. But just so far what we've heard, not that I agree with the manner of death, but what we've heard is not warranting a full release of his medical records. So that's kind of the worst part about this. But the family has decided to move on with getting a private investigator. Now, I personally put up a video advocating for them to hire an attorney. Reason being is because, not that I doubt the, capabilities of a PI, but at the end, the investigation either is going to be directed towards a criminal matter, meaning they're trying to see what may have, occurred that could be, that could warrant criminal charges, or it can be both criminal and for a civil proceeding. So with the lawsuit, that would be a civil matter. In that civil proceeding, of course, the family would have to pay a attorney for an attorney for retainers. The retainer would cover, just to kind of get the case started, you get the documents filed. Then, of course, they have to get someone that can do the investigation. The family is saying, as opposed to them starting at that point with the attorney, they're going to start with the PI. However, if the end result is to get an attorney, now you're saying that there's going to be an additional $100,000 the family's going to have to pay for a retainer for an attorney. Now, God does miracles every day. He operates in mysterious ways. Maybe there's an attorney that can help them with pro bono, or that can say, hey, we'll start it off and then we'll collect on the back end because, if there's some wrongdoing from the police department to the Office of Medical Examiner to the city itself handling FOIA requests or, mishandling FOIA requests. I mean, things that can be named as a statement of claim in the complaint between the city of Gainesville, the Gainesville Police Department, and the medical examiner. Then best scenario, my suggestion was for them to name those three as co-defendants in a lawsuit. They mentioned the girlfriend. You would have to show how she directly caused the wrongful death. And that's going to take a lot more investigation. So far, you can, at the very least, utilize the discrepancies between the medical examiner and the police department versus the medical records from the hospital because they did an initial examination. Diagnostic test results, those things that can be used in the court of law that would still be either sealed or redacted, that can also help to kind of point towards liability. You would have to show how the girlfriend has some liability in a wrongful death. So I don't know if they're gunning towards just trying to sue the girlfriend only. That would not be the good strategy. It was just not even a good strategy at all. If she's named as a co-defendant, you still have to have evidence to show that she should be held liable in a wrongful death lawsuit. What evidence would they be able to gather up to really prove that is the question. And so my question to the family would be, is this information going to go to a prosecutor for criminal charges only? Or are you gearing this up with the PI for a civil matter to proceed and hoping that criminal charges can be brought out of this particular investigation? Criminal charges afforded by the prosecutor to the court. So that would be my question. Of course, they have the ultimate right to do what they want to do. But when you're also, drawing donations from the public, there is a certain standard that you just need to have. It's that standard of morality and integrity. Otherwise, it can be taken as deception. And that is not something you want to do. So even though families have issues and fight, it cannot be an excuse to brushing these things under the rug if there is a public concern. And saying that the public should not be concerned does not aid in your fight in raising money for PIs and attorneys. So all these things need to be done in good faith. So in good faith, when there is an opportunity to discuss certain matters that the public is concerned with, do it. It's the best way to maintain the support, to be transparent, and to be honest and be genuine in your approach. Don't dog the public out and then turn around and say, how dare you all not support us financially? There has to be a level of integrity and transparency from the family to the public to quell some of the fears that the public may have or to answer some questions. So one of the reasons why I want to start with this video is because there are a few things that this advocate notates that is logical and reasonable. Of course, you still have your questions, but at least makes sense, is logical and reasonable. And so we're going to get to this. Shout out to True Crime Unraveled. I just wanted to give that little intro so that people can understand. I was one of the independent journalists that posted up a video saying the family must sue the city, the police department, and the medical examiner. And I think the idea of an investigation really comes from, either getting discovery in a lawsuit or getting subpoenas to have this information pulled in the lawsuit. And when you're putting a case together, you're basing it on your statement of claim for a lawsuit. So you can get all the evidence you want. The question is, would it be admitted to the court as evidence? Or does it address the actual statement of claim? So it comes down to, what are we going to court to pursue? What allegations are we trying to bring forth to the court that would give us, that we have sufficient evidence that would give us the result that we need? That's what you have to think about. And that's what the attorney is going to do. Sometimes PIs are not attorneys. So it's a matter of, of finding a fact, law, and evidence. And that's what an attorney can help kind of guide you towards. At the very least, get a consult. That way, they can give you guidance on what the PI should be looking for in their investigation if you're going to use one. Personally, I wouldn't, because I feel like it's just a waste of money when you're going to turn around and get an attorney either way. But that's my opinion. And the family has decided this is what they're going to do. The only thing I can do here in the LLC is respect it. So let's get to this. Shout out to True Crime Unraveled. You all, I have this sped up for the sake of brevity because I think this is a very lengthy video. But let's go.
So where we are, I'll start where I actually came in, and I just want to censor it before I get into the point. I'm gonna try to stay calm because everybody be coming for me because I start real calm before I start cussing people out. So I want to try not to do that. So that's why I scheduled this live in this particular way.
No,
when I actually had conversations with the actual family, it was literally right around the same time that they stated that they were closing out the investigation and stating that it was actually accidental. When I spoke with the family, as I stated, and a lot of people saw a post that I actually put up to the family, giving them things that I would do in ways that you would actually navigate. So matter of fact, before I get there, let me back up. So let me qualify myself before I get to the point and the things that I actually suggested. So for those of y'all who don't know, the way I became the activist was literally in 2018. My oldest son got snatched out of my car in less than 3 minutes at gunpoint by an Alachua County Sheriff's officer. Ooh. The sheriff literally attempted to bully me in a particular process, put up a Facebook post with a bunch of coded language. Whoever ran the Facebook page of the sheriff's office, they literally incited a racist dog whistle. Whoever called us out of our names, called me racist stuff, they literally was inciting them. I went and met with the sheriff. I had questions. She made excuses. I asked her why did she put up the post. She said she had a point to prove. I told her I didn't have a platform until you gave me one. Now I got a platform. I'm going to use it. Anybody that knows me knows I took her to war.
She said she had a point.
She's out of there. We got close.
The police officer said she had a point to prove. Wouldn't that be clear retaliation? Oh my God. Did she sue that particular officer? She should have sued her. First of all, learn the laws about recording conversations. If this is an officer or even a detective, they should have been wearing a body cam, and I would have had that body cam FOIA aid, or I would have been recording. If you live, I don't know if Florida is a one-party consent state, but let me tell you something. The power of that camera is something else. You're not going to tell me I have a point to prove and not think that I'm going to sue the crap out of you. As a matter of fact, I'm going to politely ask you to repeat yourself, and then I'm going to make sure that I'm recording you so we can get that on our video. Because if you got the audacity to tell me that to my face, make sure you maintain and keep that energy up when it comes to me putting the camera in your face and then having you repeat it for the record. The audacity and the gall. Are you kidding?
From there, we know I took the school board on as we tried to get rid of buses for our kids over in East Gainesville because they wanted the kids, the IB students, to be able to get the buses. We know that we got the K-9 unit shut down when Terrell Bradley was bitten by it, and then they started to stop organizing around it. We know we got free jail calls in our jails. We know we advocated and got all of the fees for people put into the jail stop. Like literally, the list goes on and on. We know that even when it came to a young man that was actually beaten by a guard in the jail, while everybody else was out letting the police show up to protest, acting like they was the damn friend, we was at the jail actually protesting people. We raised money for Devontae Gardner, who was beat in the jail, or who was actually killed at his beating. We advocated around Erica Thomas, who had her baby that died in the jail. Like the list of what I do actually goes on. Well, literally, if there's somebody who's boots on the ground, I am absolutely
boots on the ground.
We know this. We know that when we took over the city commission meeting, and I made all the police go down to the basement so that the people can actually sit in there when it came to that. And I want to qualify these things as I'm sitting watching people scroll down my timeline talking about what people should do, and they don't know a damn thing. Those are the things that I've done locally. I want to be clear. I travel this state. There are 32 counties that I have staff in that I organize in the exact same way, and I travel the entire country in order to teach other people how to organize our particular communities. And everybody knows this. In addition to that, I still go to meetings with families, and I've stopped explosions from happening. We've helped get rid of superintendents.
Maybe I've missed the name of her organization. Did she say the name? If someone can put in the comment section the name of her organization, because I definitely would like to look up some of these videos. If she had, or she attended a meeting of some sort, that's a public meeting. I would hope that there would be video evidence of this meeting, just to kind of see her in action. I think that would kind of help people understand, what all she's capable of doing and her effectiveness. So I know the family seen my past video about the lawsuit. So if someone can get this to them again and just say, hey, it would help if the, what's her name? Shanae Jackson I haven't heard her say the name of her organization, but if somebody could let me know that and have videos to kind of show what, her past work and organizing protests and all these things, going to meetings and, helping bring about change to those, who've been wrong. She named a few cases that she was involved in and helping to organize, to demand justice for some individuals. I had to kind of skip over that because she kept saying, as opposed to self-terms, she kept, using other terms, and YouTube is so finicky and such a fickle creature. They will block your videos for this. So let's get back to it. But I would like to see some of her videos just, at meetings, public meetings, or, from protests, just to kind of gauge, what she's all about. Let's go.
So there's power to be moved. There's power to be moved. Our previous chief of police, we helped to get Lonnie out of there because that's how serious this is. I want to name these things because there's a process that actually happens. So getting up on a live video, thinking that you're proving a point and not actually moving power with the people that counts means absolutely nothing to nobody. And I want to state that. So when I got with this family, I needed to understand where were things, what was actually shared with law enforcement. When I spoke to members of law enforcement, because for me, I need to go straight to the chief Moya and to each captain and also to the lieutenant of GPDs who I sent my email to, because I need to understand what was happening and why this family wasn't getting what they needed. And what was conveyed to me is, and this is what law enforcement tried to state, is that they were giving information to mom, and mom was not appropriately sharing the information with the dad's side of the family. So my statement to them is, well, he has both parents that are fully involved. So we need to close up the communication gap so we can get rid of that excuse. There are many things that the family shared with me that GPD is claiming that they don't know. Okay, so that's the reason that we did a records request. And so what we're doing is also waiting. I sent a notice to ensure that they preserve records. When they provide the records, I also want the audit trail. So therefore, you can't get rid of anything. And I've sent a very extensive record request that I actually copied the family in. What they stated to us is that the detective who was working on the case, they're waiting for him to continue to compile all of that information. I need people to understand that just because they ruled the case closed at this moment does not mean that it cannot be reopened. Cases are reopened all the time. By closing the case, it helps the family to get a death certificate so they can now do the things that are...
Cases are typically reopened when there is new evidence that would warrant the case to be open for investigation. Investigations do take labor, time, money, and that incurs costs against the department's budget. I'm not excusing this sorry-ass police department. I'm just speaking on the obstacles of what you can encounter when it comes to them reopening a case, especially when they feel that they have somehow, and we all know they haven't, but just for the sake of argument, they feel that they have already done an investigation. And if you don't bring forth sufficient evidence for them to reopen it, more than likely they will be very, very hesitant. Now, one thing that does help push along matters like that is public pressure. If there's just a huge public outcry, to really kind of rile them up and, get their attention, then they'll probably just, for the sake of appeasing the public, reopen it. And then that would be an opportunity for the family to move in with, their PI and whatever evidence they do gather up to say, hey, we have evidence now that has been sufficient to warrant this reopening of the case. We've given it to the police, and now they're going to be held liable and responsible. And if they decide to continue to be negligent, it's just building up a lawsuit against them. That's it. If they want to get upset about it, tell them to get over it. I'm sure they've been sued before as a police department, so they can kick rocks and get over it. But she mentioned the city manager. If this matter is to be escalated, I wouldn't really put my eggs in one basket hoping that the police reopen something. I would just go straight to the top because you already know what you're dealing with. These people are willing to say that the manner of death, which does not match the cause or medical records or exams, is going to be what it is and not care about that. So reopening the investigation by trying to get their attention might not be the only method. You may have to just go over their head to the top and just let it trickle back down. That way that pressure can be applied on various levels, not solely with the police department itself. Hence why I said to sue the city as well. So if the city manager wants to play dum-dum with gum-gum, now you have a better chance of holding the city liable because, once again, the city manager works for the city. So if you're not going to go straight to a lawsuit in which the city manager will still end up being kind of in focus either way into the case, into the lawsuit, and get the discovery from them that way, or have the court order them to provide the evidence, I would definitely just go to the city manager directly and say, listen, we don't have time to waste here. There are timely filing limits when it comes to even reopening a case. So you have to have sufficient evidence to warrant that. But that is, they do reopen them, but there are reasons that leads to them reopening it. What you don't want to do is give them a reason or opportunity to tell you no again. And then your PI says, well, I have a boatload of evidence. What are you doing? Then you have to go to the top either way. So you just go there now and be done with it, because you don't want to waste more time or money. And the timely filing limit for these matters to be heard starts to expire. So whatever they're going to do, they just need to get the ball rolling so that it can hopefully land in a court of law as a criminal or civil matter, either way, or even both. Is better if it's both. But all right, let's continue on.
As it relates to his estate, these can actually go into probate. Charges that are filed about money being moved past the time that he passed away can actually be navigated. So there's another part of that process that can now be moving through the court system now that part is done. There are two things that I know that they've described to you all. There's a cause of death and there's a manner of death. One, the medical examiner determines, and the other, law enforcement determines. So we're now in the phase of how does law enforcement determine that this can be accidental when all of the information that the family has shared with me does not actually support that. So that's where we are. So where we are is our next phase is now as a family and with myself, we have an in-person meeting that is scheduled with law enforcement. The reason that the boots on the ground protest march is scheduled on the 28th because it is after we meet with GPD to see what it is that they state and lay it all out. And it's after we would have gotten the records and been able to navigate to actually see what is actually in there. It does not make sense to do anything and go and actually be fine blind and we don't even know what the hell we're talking about. It doesn't make sense to make assumptions. So I want people to understand that. I've also seen posts stating that if people wanted to be boots on the ground, they would have come to the commission meeting. So I want to help people to understand organizational charts and how things work. The chief of police is the chief of police. The chief of police answers to the city manager. Yeah, they don't answer to the city commission directly. So while there is some pressure that can be applied, if there's a conversation to be had, it would be with the city manager. But we're not to that phase yet. Additionally, while there was a city commission meeting today, it was a special meeting with our city commission.
Okay, so that's the thing. I would just go to that phase because the city manager, if nothing else, then would be held liable and can put down that pressure on the police and just keep it moving. Because otherwise, you'll be backtracking and double dipping either way. Secondly, she mentioned a meeting with local law enforcement. Okay, so will the PI be in this meeting? Because you need someone in there that understands, hopefully some law. And of course, how to interpret this data, the information, the evidence, that can look at that, from their expert lens and be able to ask questions so that they get some of the answers they need. Once again, you need somebody that's going to be, absolutely well informed and assertive. I'm not saying they need to put the PI out there, just to ensure that they don't have any, levels of harassment. People are not calling, emailing, doing all this stuff. They can just focus on what they're being paid to do, which is to gather evidence and do an investigation. However, they would be the best person to have come with you since you don't have an attorney, and go from there. I'm wondering if the family can get some, initial pro bono service, how they try to reach out to like the NAACP or, other groups that can help them with cost for an attorney or the PI. However, it would be great if they had an attorney that's willing to do some pro bono work to get it started. And then it kind of helps to build a roadmap for the PI as well, and what he or she needs to specifically focus on. That would be very helpful. But, they go into this blind with law enforcement. This lady is not an attorney. And, I don't know. I want to hope for the best. They get what they need out of it. But it also helps to have the right representation that can prove to them that they are aware of the law and how it should be interpreted and what evidence to present and how to properly challenge it. So, not saying she can't. I don't know much about her. I'm just saying the PI is the person they're hiring. And unless this lady is the PI, they need to take the PI with them to that meeting. It can be a closed door meeting. No one has to know who the PI is. Just have him go in a different door or something. But at least bring the PI with you. So.
In our Alachua County Commission related specifically to school closures. So to travel from South Florida to here for a meeting that's totally unrelated makes absolutely no sense. For those of all, we're talking about our commission meetings. Our city commission meetings are every first and third Thursday at 1 p.m. And I want to make sure that I clarify that if you're going to tell somebody to show up in my city that I'm a part of and got my hands in everything, make sure you know what it is that you're actually talking about. Also, I don't want people to waste their time. So the reason that we've coordinated the meeting at the time is so when this family takes their time, effort, energy, and gas money to come here, they're not coming here for no reason. They've made multiple trips here and not gotten answers. So I prefer that we do things in order and in priority. And just because it's been done behind the scenes does not mean it's not done. I'm not doing this in order to be known. We are doing this because we understand that something is not right. And the answers that need to be gotten, we have not gotten there because everybody is sitting on the sidelines speculating instead of putting forth the effort that is needed in order to get the appropriate answers. I want to move on to the next part of this. That is frustrating because I've seen many, many people say, oh, well, they should just go hire a lawyer. Oh, well, that's what they should do. Well, oh, I don't see what when I got a PI. So I want to explain that to you. So there are lawyers who could absolutely take this particular case, but they would not be doing this family a service. So what I do in my particular work is I reach out to attorneys who are trustworthy.
Okay, so then I would have to ask how. And it's not to be mocking. It really isn't. Nor have I ever tried to be rude because I'm empathetic to the fact that they lost a loved one. They want answers. They want to know exactly what happened. They want to know how this is an accident. I think most people do because it doesn't make sense. We have not seen any camera footage from traffic lights, businesses or anything in that area. No police body cam, no paramedics body cam. Like we haven't seen anything concrete. So yes, this is still a mystery. The idea that someone just jumped out of a car with food in their lap is just absolutely absurd. And once again, the manner of death should have been ruled as a self-term, not necessarily, an accident. So it still doesn't. The police know that they've screwed up. They have a history and a track record of being a bunch of bums in Gainesville Police Department. But how would the attorney not be of service to them? And is she saying that for right now or at all? Because is it the point of possibly filing a wrongful death lawsuit to have the attorney be of service to them? Like I'm just, once again, I don't know this lady's credentials or background, but I would love to know how the attorneys would not be of a good service. I mean, either way, if you're going to get an attorney, you're still dealing with the inevitable. That's just kind of my take on that. And as always, I mean, you're going to have people online giving their commentary and giving their opinion and thoughts on things. At the very least, don't kick people for doing that. Some of them have bad intentions, but not all of us. And there are some people who have a lot of knowledge in this area and they know how the process works between an attorney, lawsuits, a PI, criminal investigations. There are a lot of well-informed people out there that are probably saying that because that would be the best option. But of course, the family has the right to do what they want to do. But they, like I said, also have to remember they're soliciting financial assistance from the public. Now they can start getting donations from private entities and corporations and get some help from other organizational groups. But you still kind of stuck with the dilemma that if the PI gets enough evidence, they're taking it to an attorney that would be of service to them. So I hope they don't knock that too quick and think, well, an attorney is never going to help. And then they never hire one. Because then what's the point of the PI if it doesn't go anywhere? So, all right, let's get back to it.
We want to be honest and upfront and not just take a particular person's money. And with these wrongful death suits, I talked to an excellent lawyer who is one of the best in the state of Florida as it relates to wrongful death, who happens to be a black woman who is from Gainesville and who's serious about our people in our community. And she laid it out because it's on the line. She could absolutely take the case, and many attorneys are. When wrongful death attorneys look at taking these cases, they're looking at what damages they can actually get. If Lulu is the person that we're filing the wrongful death suit against, and she don't have a lot of money, what would be the purpose? As I explained to her,
but what would be the purpose of just filing the wrongful death lawsuit against her solely? You have the police department that ultimately decided that the manner of death is an accident, not a homicide. So why would the wrongful death lawsuit solely name the girlfriend as the defendant? I mean, at best, a co-defendant. But you still have other parties listed that you're filing the suit against. And that would start with the city of Gainesville, the Gainesville Police Department. If the medical examiner wants some, he can get it too, he or she. But it should not solely be against the girlfriend. Once again, you got to have some evidence. The burden to meet in a civil matter is a preponderance, but it needs to be more likely than not. If she can bring up a defense and then point out how there's no evidence to have her held liable, you're talking about losing the case either way. So don't just name her in the lawsuit. If there's evidence to warrant her to be a co-defendant, great. But if not, then you can't say that she would be the person and we don't have any evidence, and then, what's the point? No, there are other people you can sue. And the city gets sued all the time. This will not be their first lawsuit in the city of Gainesville. Or the police department. Or probably even the medical examiner. There might be sufficient case law to show other cases filed where they screwed up and families sued the city and won. So, don't just sue the girlfriend. That would definitely get you nowhere.
The answers that we're trying to get can be presented in that particular case. And what she stated is that you can do all of that. You can file the case. If she does not answer or respond, which she cannot, they could rule in this family's favor. It can go to a default and it just goes to the credit bureau or whatever, and you still never get the answers and you will have wasted money. She was also very clear what a lawyer would do if they took the case was put the family on retainer, and the retainer would probably be about $300,000 up front, with them billing at $1,000 an hour. And as a part of billing at that $1,000 per hour is when they would pay for the PI. So it does not make sense to secure a lawyer at this time when you can secure the PI.
Why would they, attorney? Hold on. That's a lot of money. That is absolutely absurd. $1,000 an hour? Are there no cheaper attorneys for wrongful death? And then, of course, if the family can't afford it, then they can get assistance. They're already crowdfunding and raising money on social media. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that there are other avenues to raise funds. But why $1,000 an hour? I get that you like that particular person, but you might have to look around and find another attorney that's a little bit cheaper. And would do just as great of a job as anyone else, if not better. But I just, I can't agree to saying we're not going to get an attorney right now because the one I like that I work with charges $1,000 an hour. Let's have a backup option, maybe 2. So option number 1 is off the table. You should still have option 2 and then 3. And if this attorney wants to charge $1,000 an hour, then at least ask her, hey, do you recommend any other attorneys? Because the family can't afford all of it. I thought personally the family was financially, stable at the very least and, sufficiently could take care of some of the expenses. I'm not saying all. $300,000 is absurd. But, there are other attorneys that you can just get and go that route. But try to, get some assistance. At least let the public know that you're trying to help build up some funds on the back end where it's not solely coming from the public. And then she mentioned probate court. I did not know Tyrone Jr. had an estate. I know he had a life insurance policy, but I didn't know he had an estate. So if they're going to probate court, who are they challenging for his estate? Because that comes down to who he left his estate to. Did he not have a will or last will and testament or anything? This is why it's important to have that. I think everyone should have a living will and an advance directive a medical advance directive. That way you can have one or two people appointed to make medical decisions on your behalf, and they serve as a check and balance to each other. Two people you trust that will make the right decisions and get second, third, fourth, fifth opinions if need be, and follow your advance directive. Then you can have, on the flip side, that living will, and then that can be filed with an attorney. You can make sure that whomever you list has a copy of your will. So that way it's very clear as to who is to do what. And if he has an estate, that's more of a reason. If you have a business, you have property, you have multiple vehicles that are highly valuable, from jewelry down to electronics, you need to write out who gets what and ensure that you were in your right frame of mind when you wrote it. Get it notarized, have it filed with an attorney at the very least. So in situations like this, you're talking about someone going to court to challenge the estate. It will be hard for them to dispute what's in writing if he had a will. So let this be a lesson to you all. Have a living will, have a medical advance directive, and have it outlined as to what you want done. We're talking about the inevitable here. The way he went out was absolutely horrible. But be prepared. It doesn't take away people wanting to pursue justice. You're just wanting what happens to your belongings, your property, your assets to be secured, and it goes to the right people. That's my only thing. So I don't know what would happen if they went to probate court. I mean, they would still need an attorney. So I'm just curious as to where that would lead. And you still end up having to get an attorney either way.
PI utilize all of the money that is gathered in order to gather the information and then come to the lawyer actually on the back end. And so, like she stated, they can easily go find another attorney that would be just fine with taking their money. But in her good conscience, it would not make sense. And then the family still won't get what it is that they're actually seeking. So I hope this helps to explain to people why this is. I also saw banter about other people stating that other people, because they got on live and stated they knew this and they pieced this together, is why they should be compensated. So even myself, and I'm good at what I do, I'm not asking to be compensated. The reason that I want them to go and get a certified PI is because a PI has access to certain systems that we don't have access to. They have certain credentials that we actually don't have. So there's information that they can get, that law enforcement can get, that we cannot get. So if I talk about geofencing, which the layman's person does not know what that actually.
Okay, so let's talk about this certified PI. Okay, so I just pulled up a quick Google search of a certified PI, their roles and responsibilities, and the powers that they have in order to do an investigation. And I specifically, of course, looked up a PI in the state of Florida, because that's where the family is. That's where the crime was committed. So a certified PI in Florida holding a Class C license is authorized to conduct lawful surveillance, perform background checks, interview witnesses, and collect evidence for civil or criminal cases. They commonly investigate infidelity, fraud, missing persons, and theft while adhering to state privacy laws. So this is more related to a wrongful death, unless they're, accusing someone of fraud. Infidelity would be if you're married, or I think even common law married. But if you're married, I don't know if there was any theft. This is certainly not a missing person. So this is what they commonly investigate. Not saying that they don't investigate, a suspicious death itself, but that's more common what they're known to do. Key capabilities of a Florida PI include surveillance, and that's just observing, photographing, documenting individuals in public spaces, because, you have no right to privacy or expectation of it in the public. Information gathering, running background checks, searching public records, and locating assets, interviews and statements, interview witnesses and individuals, provided it is done voluntarily. So you get this PI. What happens when they want to do an interview or get statements and the person does not want to cooperate? And we'll get to that in a minute, but keep that in mind. So if they go out and they say, hey, we want to interrogate the girlfriend and the mother. And the girlfriend and the mother decide we are not going to even entertain that. We're not answering any questions or anything. The PI has no legal authority to force that. They can't compel or overly influence or convince them or threaten them to do anything. And I have to say this with complete neutrality and impartiality. As much as I would love to see a girlfriend do any level of an interrogation or deposition of some sort, and be forced to answer questions like under oath or as a part of an investigation, where she's ordered to do it, maybe with a court, I can't say that the PI, as you can see here clearly, would be able to force her to do it. We still haven't seen these so-called results from the lie detector test. Why isn't that available? Why hasn't the girlfriend posted these so-called lie detector test results? She can easily redact her personal information, but if you have someone that can interpret the data from those lie detector tests, get someone to interpret it and post it up. Why would she not release that information? If you want people to believe that you passed a polygraph 3 times, not once, twice, but 3 times, why not present the evidence? Present all of the results so that we can see why you had to do this 3 times. Because otherwise, it's a waste of time and money. Those types of tests are not cheap. So, where are the results? So here we have, it has to be voluntary. You have skip tracing, that's locating missing persons, witnesses, or individuals, evading obligations. That also includes process serving, delivering legal documents like subpoenas and summons. Of course, if there is a matter in the court of law, they cannot issue a subpoena or a summon, on their own professional behalf to anyone. A subpoena or a summon has to be signed by a judge, and it has to be filed with the court. Otherwise, you don't have the authority to act on behalf of a judge or jury or law enforcement. So, digital investigation includes reviewing digital records and conducting cybersecurity investigations. So, their limitations are as follows. Florida PIs cannot trespass on private property, use wiretapping, impersonate law enforcement. They cannot impersonate law enforcement. Even if you hire someone who's a retired law enforcement detective or investigator of any sort, in this capacity as a PI, they cannot impersonate law enforcement. They can't. So now could they get someone who has that experience? Yes. Probably would be better if they did. But let's say this person was never law enforcement. They certainly cannot impersonate one in this capacity or use illegal harassment tactics. Once again, it goes back to no means no. So if the PI wants anyone who is not willing to participate to do an investigation or to answer questions or give statements, they cannot force it. All right. So let's take a look at some additional information quickly. So here's a search I just did asking what happens, when you lie to a certified PI in Florida. Once again, I'm pulling up the specific state because state laws can dictate the roles and responsibilities and powers that PIs have depending on the scope and nature of the investigation. So state laws, of course, can vary state to state. So there could be, a couple nuances between a PI in New York versus a PI in Florida. Hence why I'm trying to be consistent with at least focusing on a certified PI in the state of Florida. Lying to a certified PI in Florida is generally not a crime in itself, as private investigators are not considered law enforcement officers for the purposes of the statutes that criminalize false statements to police. So if you lie to the police, that's one thing. You lie like hell to a certified PI, that would not be unlawful or illegal. And they themselves, the certified PI, cannot legally bring about any reprimand on you. So you would be committing perjury if you lied under oath or you lied to a federal investigator of some sort. But you're not. What's the consequence if you lied to a certified PI, right? Because they're not serving as law enforcement. They're not considered law enforcement officers. However, there are important caveats. No law enforcement status, being the biggest one. Investigators in Florida are licensed professionals, not state or federal law enforcement agents. You do not have the same legal obligation to be truthful with them as you would with a police officer or federal agent. Voluntary statements. Any statements you make to a PI are typically considered voluntary and lack confidentiality, meaning the investigator can share that info with their client or the police. Now, potential criminal charges. Lying in certain situations could still lead to criminal charges if it involves other crimes such as obstruction of justice / perjury, if the PI is working under the impress written authority of a government official for a specific criminal investigation, or if you make a false statement under oath during a deposition or court testimony. See, that's what perjury is. You're either lying to, or giving false statements under oath, or to an actual federal investigator or law enforcement. That's it. Falsifying documents, providing false written documents or evidence could be a separate offense. That would be for law enforcement, not the PI. So the law enforcement officer would have to charge you with that offense, whereas the certified PI cannot do that. They cannot bring forth charges against you themselves. They can only recommend charges to a prosecutor if it's criminal. If it's a civil matter, family can use it for a civil proceeding. All right, interfering with a pending police investigation. If the PI provides your false statement to law enforcement and it is found you were attempting to impede a real police investigation, you could face charges under Florida Statute 837.05 or 837.055. In short, while you generally won't be arrested for lying to a PI, the info you provide can still have significant legal ramifications. So that would be if it ends up in the hands of a federal agency as a part of a federal investigation or law enforcement, or if you end up going to court. But as you can see, the PI is very limited in what they can do, under the color of law. So the PI gets all this evidence and documentation. They want to go out and conduct interviews and get statements. That's the biggest hurdle, because if you don't have a lot of evidence to go on, you have to start with, doing interviews and taking statements. And then you kind of go through those statements and interviews and investigate from there. You still have to ensure that it's, expressed, that it's voluntary. Otherwise, the PI can get in trouble. And then, what does that land you, right? So, okay, this is the last search I did because I just wanted to be clear. There are major differences between a PI, a certified PI, and a law enforcement officer or LEO. All right, so a PI, and I'm just reading, you guys can research this information. The part that's highlighted in blue up, it basically kind of defines the roles of a certified PI versus an LEO. Of course, the certified PI are licensed civilians hired by individuals or companies for private, civil, or corporate investigations specializing in surveillance and research. LEOs are sworn government employees with statutory authority to enforce laws, make arrests, and use official resources, usually focusing on criminal cases. So here are some of the key major differences here with authority and powers. Of course, the PI as private citizens, meaning they have no powers of arrest beyond those of a normal citizen. And they have citizens arrest. They cannot execute search warrants, tap phones, or compel testimony. The police, of course, have the authority to do all of those things. They have the right legal authority to stop, search, seize evidence, and arrest individuals backed by constitutional power and government oversight. The scope of work. PIs focus on civil cases, infidelity, corporate surveillance, background checks, and locating missing persons. Police, of course, focus on public safety, investigating violations of federal or state laws, and prosecuting crimes. Employment and clientele. PIs typically work for private agencies, legal firms, or as independent contractors paid by clients. Of course, police employed by municipalities, states, or the federal government funded by taxes. Access to info. PIs must use legal public means to find info adhering closely to privacy laws. So if this PI goes and access information on some software platform and they're not authorized to do that, they can be in trouble. So with the young lady, I can't remember her name, is it Shanae Jackson, with her stating that they have access to certain software programs, it still has to be software programs that can also be searched by the public. They have to use public means to find information, legal public means. So trying to get access to someone's social security number and date of birth, no. Yeah, you run background checks, they have to be able to show how that information is being utilized. Otherwise, it could be a breach of privacy. So, collaboration. PIs frequently assist in criminal cases by gathering evidence for defense attorneys doing follow-up work. The police lack resources to do. In this situation, it's just Gainesville Police Department being incompetent. Oh, God, they're the worst. Key considerations. PIs can dictate extensive time to one case, whereas police must manage high caseloads. PIs can work globally or in multiple jurisdictions, while police are restricted to their assigned jurisdiction. So these are the major key differences here. So let's get back to the video to follow up more on the information from the family.
We can utilize phone numbers and track the locations of all of his phones when the family keeps saying there are other phones that other people don't know where they are. When we're talking about GPS locators, a lot of people are even talking about when the car travel. It's just, for example, when somebody gets in a car accident and we're trying to figure out how do we know that a person was going 100, it is because there's a black box in the car, which is actually the system that goes in there that some PIs have access to that us as lay people actually don't have access to. And it's frustrating for me as a person who's wrapped and involved in this that so many people sell you all a line and everybody is hoorah, hoorah, hoorah and jumping on a bandwagon because you all actually don't know how things actually work. And when things is not moving as fast as you would like it to move, must be something wrong, and you automatically turn around and put it back on the family. I'm frustrated because I had somebody to reach out today and stated that I guess the family's business is supposed to be aired out. Y'all know me. I'm a straight shooter. Families are chaotic, period. I don't care. I don't care who didn't get along. I don't care what happened. I cut them off. I don't know a black family that is perfect. There is no such thing. I don't give a damn.
I don't know any family of any race that's perfect.
That you're not true to self, and I want to state that. But I tell you this: my family is dysfunctional like anybody else, but you ain't gonna fuck with them. And that's the point that I need all of us to know and understand. We might go through how is it that we forget this when it's somebody else's family? How do we forget how difficult it is and how people are grieving in these particular things when we all just want to have something to talk about and something to be relevant? I've been extremely quiet, and if you notice, the family is not into me because I don't care like that, and people know that. We're taking the time now because y'all lost the plot. And we can't afford to lose the plot. And I want to be clear with you, and not just in this case, but in every case, this is typically what law enforcement does. They wait us out so we can lose the plot. They wait us out. They don't have to be held accountable. Most cases and scenarios take years to navigate. And what happens is people get tired, people go and they start living life, they go do other things, and you never get the answers and the things that you deserve. And the issue for me is it's not just about Tyrone. It is about, with GPD, I can tell you the number of cases that were traffic or accident related where it was a black victim that was involved that was not investigated properly. And even if there was any justice at all, it was so minimal. Let's talk about Kurt Rowe and the person that killed him in a car accident only got 4 years because GPD fucked up. Let's talk about because GPD did, like I literally can go on and on about the number of cases. Let's talk about my cousin David that literally got hit on University Avenue and no justice took place because GPD didn't properly investigate. So months down the road, as we're trying to go back and do things, so much valuable and vital evidence was lost. Let's talk about the two girls. Months after David got hit, the same thing happened, and they went to the hospital, and those girls were severely injured and gave them jaywalking tickets. And so the deal is, it's bigger than.
So my question would be: did she ever pursue a lawsuit, or did those families pursue lawsuits against the city? Because she's giving out the names of the victims. I'm wondering, are there any cases on file where they sued the city and the police department? Because this goes back to their liability and their negligence. Once again, the information that this PI gathers has to be through use of public means. So they can't just go hacking into systems, or they just can't pull information that could be a violation of privacy or even a violation of HIPAA privacy. A violation of financial privacy. They can't just go pulling information from your bank. That there are restrictions that, if not adhered to, can cost them, a lot of time and money that the family has paid to them, only for them, the PI, to get sued and the family to get sued because they violated HIPAA privacy or financial privacy or just privacy in general of a regular civilian. You have to do things the right way. And I'm not speaking prematurely and saying that, this PI is doing that. I'm just putting it out there that this is a heavy restriction and they can't just, go to court and get a subpoena or a summons. So if whatever they're looking for, if they're not able to get it through public means, or if they want to get, an interview with the girlfriend or the mom or whatever, they can't force them to do it. So I would hate for it to be a situation where the evidence that they can gather up is severely limited and you don't get any cooperation from anybody, because now these people know that the PIs don't really have any legal power or authority. So what does that lead you? That's kind of my question, right? This is why I've been advocating for them to get an attorney, because an attorney can do that. If they had a lawsuit, they can go to court, then they can get a subpoena or summons, do depositions. They can get people under oath. This way, the girlfriend has 3 polygraph tests. Okay, well, we want that as discovery. And then we want a deposition. And then they ask her they admit that exhibit as evidence into a hearing, into the case, based on the girlfriend's testimony. And they can get all of this under oath. The PI cannot force the girlfriend to do a deposition in court. They cannot order her to do that. So if she's still lying, or she just evades, answering questions, giving statements altogether, then where does this lead you? and if the evidence gathered still lands on the desk of an attorney, you're already having to get one either way. But there are so many limitations on this, and I foresee, the pivotal people who should be interviewed, I foresee them being, difficult and just failing to cooperate, and they're not legally obligated to do it. Ugh, man, I try to remain neutral and fair in this so I can, just kind of express the information on both sides. Like I said, as much as I want this girlfriend to be deposed, a PI cannot get a deposition. So let's get back to it.
One person. So when y'all lose the plot and how this man lost his life, if we don't stand and become consistent and show up for each other, it'll be somebody else. It so happens that this family is traveling from Broward, but literally this happens in our community all the time. That's why none of us are surprised. That's why so many of you all are following it, because it's so familiar. And so what I'm asking y'all to do is stay tuned in. Pay attention. Listen to what it is. Before they gave the last few updates, they made sure to verify that the information was correct before sharing it with you. Stop letting outside people come in and tell you what's right, what's wrong, because they don't know. So they're not in the email communications that I have in writing, because I'm the receipt queen. They don't know what the records request is that I sent, because they're not a part of that. They don't know when the meeting actually is. And I haven't stated that, and we've not shared it. You will know once the family gets here. The thing that you know is the boots on the ground and the action that's going to take place on the 28th, because it takes all of us. And literally, the reason that we want you all there is to bring the attention to it so other people can say, hey, I remember on that day this or that happened. Think about, because these people have been consistent, they were able to find other witnesses. They were able to talk to other people to know that they've not been in an interview. That's what this literally is about. So many things happen to us in our community because we lose the plot. And we lose the plot because so many people want to be, I don't even know. So many people want to be known. This Facebook shit, this social media shit, it's too much. It's addicted to so many people. And I literally left from an event that I had to do, trying to save our schools from being closed, to sit down and to literally see that this is happening. I don't know what it is. I probably do, but we're not going there. I asked them, and mind you, it's so much going on that they didn't necessarily want to get on here, but I wanted to utilize this as an opportunity to educate people, as an opportunity to recenter and get back to where it is, as an opportunity to let y'all know that's noise. I don't give a damn what somebody stated they was outing. Whatever was out, and I didn't watch the video, and I'm keeping it a buck with you. I don't care. You can look and say, if it did happen, that's it. That's my uncle over there. That's my cousin right there. That's my this. Because that's us. Let's be real about this. We real people. Like, let's keep it G. So the lack of communication is there's a mom and a dad on both sides. The purpose of this is to close in the gaps. I can't finger point and say, well, mama, you didn't get information to dad, and dad, you get information to mama. I also know that sometimes they talk above people on purpose. So instead of me pointing fingers at anybody, let's get it all together. Let me figure out what people know and then take it from there. So if y'all know me, I'm relentless as fuck, but I don't start there. The way that we're starting is we're going to sit down to the table, look at what they actually have, what they actually went by, and we're going to actually take it from there. This whole notion. What we're going to go by is the certified PI is who they hired because they have access to tools that all of us don't have. What we're going to do is follow this process.
And that might be problematic because the evidence and the information they gather has to be through public means, not by access that the public does not have. That is what state law requires for certified PIs in the state of Florida. So that can be problematic. I'm not saying that I can't tell what the family what to do, but I've seen this play out, and it leads down a hole to where nothing beneficial comes out of it if you can't get cooperation. And then if the Gainesville Police Department with the incompetent asses sit and try to go out their way to possibly interfere, then what? How do you navigate people that may try to interfere with this? At some point, if this private investigator wants to do an interview, you have some people that just can't hold water. I personally would rather the PI remain confidential so that they can do what they need to do in peace. But, were you going to make the person they interview sign an NDA saying you can't call someone and say, I just came here to do this with you? And how would they enforce that? So, people are going to talk and start spreading the word either way about who the PI is. And then if no one cooperates, you're at square one. So is she the PI or, she just said they hired a certified PI, but is she going to be helping the PI with their investigation? How is this going to go?
Are no shortcuts. I want to be clear. This is not the time or the space in order to hire the attorney. It's not beneficial for the family. It's not beneficial for the cause at this particular moment. I want to center. Ain't nobody playing with any money that actually has been given. It has been utilized for what it's supposed to be utilized for. I saw another post where they said, well, they don't need no money to ask y'all for y'all money. My deal is this. If we're sitting back and we're watching, if we got so much to say, we should have help to give. White people...
No. I disagree with that. I disagree with that because the public is asking for accountability. If you hired a PI, there's nothing wrong with showing a receipt that you hired a PI. You can redact the name and just show the initials and any address, phone number, emails, so that the PI can maintain their own, privacy themselves and confidentiality. But you gotta produce some evidence to show that you hired the PI and the funds that you raised from the public went towards this PI. There's nothing wrong with having, some accountability here. There's nothing wrong with the public asking for that, as long as it's being done the right way. I don't know what their financial situation is, and I'm not going to just attack them for wanting to help raise funds to do what needs to be done. But if the only thing people ask is that you remain transparent and, use good judgment and wisdom, and you provide a receipt for an invoice or a redacted contract that they have with this PI, a receipt to show that they paid fees for this PI, and of course the charges. I mean, what is the billable rate for this PI? If we're talking about a PI that's still charging you $700-800, you might as well get the attorney, or get another attorney that's just as good and a lot cheaper. And then that way you can be assured that there's some, legal authority behind the attorney as opposed to this PI. But transparency is not something that people should be afraid to ask for. It should be something the family should, want to render, and do it in good faith. I don't think anybody is asking them. I'm not either way. I speak for me. I'm not expecting the family to open up their bank accounts and their wallets and, show every penny they've spent. That's unrealistic. But if you are soliciting public funds from the public, and you're saying that this is the purpose and the intent that this money is going towards, in order to avoid the aspect of deception, just show a receipt, redact it out properly. The PI will know what to redact and then what to leave, so that the public can see that there's money that went to a person who is a certified PI. Maybe have their license or credentials or something, and redact out personal information like the date of birth, their social, their address, at least name and some sort of certification number or something. There's nothing wrong with the public asking for that. And if you, at least show something in good faith, there won't be a demand for it, and that way the PI can do whatever they need to do. Even though personally, I'm just being honest, I don't know how much they will be able to gather. I fear that we might end back up at square one. That's my opinion, and I'm sure many will disagree. So, all right.
For each other for far less. We should be glad to give 25, 50, 100, or whatever it is for justice, because it's bigger than just this family. Stop letting people talk you out of showing up for us and our people. Stop it. Stop letting people justify. That's why I want to give my money. It's all bullshit. And I want to state that to you. My final point is, get your source. The fact that I'm seeing the same people being bullshit every few months. Come on now. The fact that it's the same people in bullshit every few months. And I want to keep that a book. I want to open it up if Natalie or Ms. Natasha actually want to have anything to say. And then I just want to look at any of the comments in case we need to address any while we are on here.
Natalie addressed transparency. We chose to open our grief up to the world because we know the importance of awareness. But with transparency comes responsibility. This is an investigation that we want to continue. We want a conviction. What we release affects how this case is handled. She also addressed the money. We understand when you're putting your money up, you want to know what's going on. That's why we did that live last weekend. We were very open, very transparent. And then she said something that cut deep. Y'all don't know T2. Y'all know Stepdaddy DRO, the social media influencer. Y'all don't know the boy who loved four-wheelers, who my granddaddy had to kick his behind because he wanted to work instead of going to school. We opened up to the world because you needed to know him as a person. His kids were in her living room yesterday. They deserve to know what happened to their daddy. Right now we're telling them we got them forever. We can't answer any questions. So while we're sitting around trying to explain to the world, we got to give his kids answers and we ain't got none for them. Natasha closed it out. We never laughed in nobody's face. We're not here to argue. We're not kissing no booty. This movement was placed in us from the moment the family said, Tasha, let them know we want to know what happened.
And I've stated this before, we as a family chose to open our grief and our heartache up to the world. We chose to bring the world in, not because it was beneficial to us, but because we know the importance of awareness. We know the importance of numbers, and we know what it means to truly make a difference when you're standing together. So for that reason, our family chose to open a lot of things up to the world. And as a result of that, we have tried to maintain transparency to a certain extent. But what I need for people to understand is with transparency comes responsibility. And despite our desire to include the world in as much as possible, we must also remain mindful that this is an investigation that we want to continue. We want a conviction as a result of this. So what we release all affects how this case is and will be handled moving forward. So yes, we try to be transparent. Yes, we try to give you guys information. Yes, we try to provide updates, especially when it comes to the money, because we understand when you putting your money up for something, you want to know what's going on. And that's the reason we did that live last weekend, which we thought was a really great live. We were really excited as a family to share that information with you guys. We felt like we were very open. We were very transparent. We thank the people who had publicly and not publicly helped us, because there are people who have been behind.
Okay, so perhaps they did show a receipt and I didn't see it. I'm just asking here. Did I miss the receipt? If anyone can email me whatever the link is, I don't have Facebook, so whatever live they're referring to, if they showed a receipt for the money they put down for the PI, then I will definitely correct this, because I maybe they showed the receipt. I don't know. I don't know what live, because like I said, I don't have Facebook, so I don't know where that video is, but I will definitely look out for it. If they have any invoices or receipts they paid on, copy of a contract or something to show that there is a PI working on this. I could have missed it, and I apologize if I did, but I haven't seen anything thus far. But if I've missed something, please, by all means, let me know in the comments section, and I will take a look at it. Of course, either way. So.
In the scenes, just like Miss Shanae, and they've been helping our family to navigate this process. But I want you guys to understand, this is not an easy process. This is not something that we do like a skip and a hop in the park. This is something that really takes work. And when you're saying boots on the ground, understand that boots on the ground don't always mean them in your face. Boots on the ground mean they're putting in work. So just because you have information doesn't mean you're putting in work, because a lot of people have a lot of information that's not accurate, and a lot of people have a lot of information that's not necessarily beneficial. So understand that we are mindful of what we give. We are mindful of what we deliver. I wish we would have been a little more mindful at this point, just because of how things have taken a turn. But us opening ourselves up to the world is because for us, the world needed to know Dro. And I ain't even gonna say Dro, the world needed to know T2. Because the world knew Dro. They knew more than motivation with Dro. They knew social media influencer. They knew YouTube channel Stepdaddy Dro. They knew him. Y'all don't know T2. Y'all don't know the guy that loved four-wheelers and dirt bikes as a kid. Y'all don't know the boy who my granddaddy had to kick his behind because he wanted to work instead of going to school. Y'all don't know the boy who was at our house harassing us every day because he thought he was our daddy and not our big cousin. Y'all don't know him. Y'all know Stepdaddy Dro, social influencer. We know him as a person, and we opened up to the world because you guys needed to know him as a person, because what happened to him, like his dad keeps saying, he didn't deserve that. He was better than that. And he would have never done that to anybody, not even an enemy. He wouldn't have done that to. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. That's why we're standing how we're standing. And we're not beefing with nobody. Because the only thing that matters to us has been and still is justice for Dro. His kids who sat in my living room yesterday deserve to know what happened to their daddy. They deserve for us to be able to say,
not to get on board or not, the Davis family got to find justice for Dro regardless. And it's not to say we have some beautiful loving people that came on board and we welcome them with open arms. I'm saying that to say this movement has to take place for our bloodline. This movement was placed in us from the moment the family said, okay, Tasha, let them know we want to know what happened. Let them know the lies that we were given. Me not only thinking it's going from Broward County and right there in front of my family yard. That's it. I didn't know this was going to go all over the world from one simple post that touched somebody to get on board for the number one issue, movement for Dro. Before that live, nobody outside of that, ain't too many know who Dro was. So it opened up the doors. This man lost his life for treating a girlfriend to a Christmas vacation that ended up with him on the side of the road, left abandoned. That's not right. It got opened up. I said, let's have a candle like the family. We all come together as one. So we won, no matter what, whatever.
I think she meant to say that, she just said there are a lot of people who knew who he was on Facebook. Maybe there weren't a lot of people who knew he was on other social media platforms, but she just said I've never seen his Facebook profile, so I don't know what his Facebook page looks like, what his following supporters, are. I don't know those numbers, but if he was very popular, I would hope that he was well known enough for people to inquire. I'm not saying her video didn't go viral either. It definitely did. But I would hope that there was some reporting on this before she did her live, but she went live rather quick about it. I mean, it was a day after they found out, he was in the hospital and had passed away. So, it wasn't like she waited a whole week or anything. I think it was like the next day, perhaps. But I think, and there's nothing wrong. Like I said, everybody grieves in their own way. I understand their need to want to try to protect and preserve what they can, to ensure that they can get information and evidence that they need. But once again, the certified PI have, a lot more limitations than, in accordance with the law, than I think they are assuming and being impressed to believe. So it's just a matter of reading and understanding the rights and the role and responsibilities of a certified PI that will help people to understand what they can and cannot do and gather and information that they can, hopefully piece together and present to the public. This isn't, like I said, we saw the information, we looked up. This is something that can be made available to the public. So there may not be any expectation of confidentiality or privacy in it. Are the family members prepared to release information from this PI? Are they prepared to share it? How do you maintain trust with the public if the public is seeking answers? You've hired a certified PI. I'm not quite sure if they showed a receipt. Maybe they did and I didn't see it. But so far I haven't seen one. And, you go about and thinking that the information should not be shared with the public. It's just a recipe for disaster. So hopefully they don't feel that everybody's out with ill will. There are a lot of people who have, ill intentions. No one should be attacking the family, grieving. No one should be doing that. But people are going to have questions. People are going to have their theories. You cannot control what people say or what they think. That's something that we're protecting under the First Amendment. Free speech, free press, freedom of expression. That's if you're worried about trying to control what people are thinking and saying, that's already a lost battle. Focus on whatever evidence you want to gather and how that's going to be useful and utilized in the future. So this is all I have. I just, hopefully you guys go check out True Crime Unraveled. I do a separate video, like I said. I know there is a video of Polo speaking out. I'm not getting into the messiness of what's happening with the relatives and this mysterious woman with the father, Tyrone Sr. I'm not getting into that. I can't. This has already been, a bit, let's say, overwhelming for a lot of content creators and people because the information is so finicky and back and forth. And we still want just concrete evidence. There are a lot of things they don't want to be put out there, but PI cannot guarantee that confidentiality. They can't. So once again, we're back at I don't, like I said, I feel that this is back at square one. And if the family can't be more transparent, it won't be as fruitful as they hope, because now people are going to start doubting because we clearly see the PIs can release information. And then the family decides, nope, we're not releasing that. It's going to just add to more doubt. By all means, everybody is grown and have the authority and ability to do what they want, especially when it comes to your money. If you want to donate to them, you have the right to do that. I'm not here to stop anyone from doing that or discourage anyone from doing that. I'm certainly not overlooking anything regarding their grieving process. They lost someone they loved. This young man lost his life. He had 2 kids. He was doing very well for himself. I've always said from day one that, you get the impression that he carried a lot of the family and his friends financially. So I'm sure there's an impact financially with them, as well as mental, emotional, psychological, and physical impact with losing someone. These kids are the main important factor in this. That's why I'm not going to go into the drama with the whole thing. I just wanted to see if there was any updates or information because of this PI being hired. And of course, the statements the family has made through this advocate here regarding the attorney. Right now, they just don't want to hire an attorney. But I still believe that's the best route to go because they have a lot more authority that they can utilize, than a certified PI. And I just wanted the public to be well informed of the differences, which is why I looked this information up. Whether you found it useful or not, I hope you did. Hit the like button, hype this video up. I'm sure the family will be watching. I'm not here to bash them at all. We all want the same thing, which is to get the information out there so that people can understand how this young man lost his life. It's definitely of great public interest. This case is still getting, a lot of credible attention from a lot of platforms on various social media platforms as well. And hopefully one day this will land in the news. I think the local news has covered parts of this, but it would be nice to see this more national. Either way, support them if you desire. If God gives you the desire to do so, do it. And hopefully the family will remain transparent and use wisdom in what they share and understand that there's nothing wrong with sharing certain information and fully understand the role of a PI and what they're getting into and what they just paid their money for. Personally, I'm curious to know how much this PI is charging, because if it's something that would be equivalent to an attorney, by all means, get an attorney, dear God. But I hope this does render something useful and productive. Either way, that's all I have for today. Shout out to True Crime Unraveled. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This video is long enough. I did not intend for it to be this long, but I just had to do a little research so people can understand fully what this foretells. And I will see you all in the next one. Hit the like button, subscribe to the Lady Luck Club with Sweet Tea, hype the videos, leave your thoughts in the comment section. And until the next one, Lady Luck Club out.